All right, everyone. Well, we're going to go ahead and get this rolling because we're trying to keep it nice and short, 30 minutes. So this is our business owner interview series. I know many of you have joined us in the past. We've been doing this now for a couple of years since through COVID, we weren't able to do our typical business owner forums. And so we started doing these business owner interviews, which folks seem to enjoy. If you're interested in viewing or listening to past, you can always access those through our websites as well. So with that, I'm going to introduce, you all know Joe Strazzeri, and then we have our client Lisa sitting with us as well. We'll save her last name for another day. Yeah. Besides,
go by Costa.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we don't need to share that as well. So Lisa, as a second generation family business owner with her brother, they also have some of their kids now working in the business. So we're dealing with the third generation as well. So Lisa, once again, thank you for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. We've been working together now for a few years with both with all sorts of different issues with the business and family and all kinds of stuff. So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ella. Thanks, Shelley. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, good morning, Joe.
Good morning. We got to say good morning downstairs as I was finishing a call and she was walking up. So Lisa and John own a company together that was started out originally by your dad, your dad and your mom. We've since lost your dad and your mom no longer participates in the business. And you still take care of your mama.
Yep.
And that was the reason. Your dad was an old-fashioned immigrant that was all about family. Is that fair?
Correct. Yeah.
So how did dad start the business? What caused that?
He started High Tech, can I say the name of the
Sure, if you want, that's fine.
High Tech Honeycomb. He again came in his 20s from Brazil as a lobster fisherman, mind you, and he was working here in San Diego on the docks, and by coincidence fell upon another business owner who owned an aerospace manufacturing company here, and he had just let go of his captain, and he looked at my father and said, "Can you drive this boat?" And my father was one not to say no to anything at the time, and so he said, "Yes, I could do it." And he said, "Okay, great, we're going to go to Catalina in the morning." And he'd never been even on a boat that big at the time, so he practiced all night, practiced docking the boat, and from there ended up being successful as a captain for that short period of time, but then grew in to be this person's right-hand person, and eventually became vice president of the company. Over the years, he worked there for 25 years, and in the late 80s, had decided to go off on his own, and the company in San Diego had fallen apart.
Yeah, the prior owner ran into some federal regulation issues. They even asked your dad to testify against the guy that gave him the shot. Your dad said not only no, but hell no, I'm not that kind of a guy, and was very loyal to him. And as that company ended, your dad started the company that now exists, doing something very similar, if not exact.
Actually very different, but it'd be in
that industry. And what was the first warehouse? The garage? The
garage, yes. Yes. And he basically had to start over again completely, and it was without anything again. And at age of 48, 49, he started, and John, my brother, was along as far as helping him out, because my father still had again, his English he knew how to talk, but as far as
how old was John at that point?
John was John was 18.
And how old were you?
I was 20. Yeah.
So John did not take the college path. John did the let's work in the garage with dad path. Is that fair?
Correct.
And then they built that.
They built that, and my father had the contacts got the approvals from like from GE. They knew as a minority business owner, where to go, who to talk to get those approvals. That if you become basically a small business you're a minority owner, you know that then these certain companies are going to give you those contracts as well.
And he grew
So-
pretty quickly.
Correct, yes. And so we make one specific part that goes in every gas turbine engine. And it's called honeycomb. It's made of alloy nickel, of an alloy metal, and it's corrugated to make honeycomb, and it goes in every engine of every airplane.
And your company has the largest market share of that in the world.
We are, I would say yes today. I don't know the percentage wise, but there's very few competitors out there that do it. And after so many hours, it has to go in for repair, the engines. So honeycomb has to be put in there. So it's a lot of repeat of customers, of orders. So it has proved to be successful in that sense. And
then you went to college and you got an HR degree. And then when do you come to work in the company? How old are you?
I went 6 years later, and they were already off of Miramar Road. They went out of the garage and started making more of the machines. So I started off. I came from sales, so Dad wanted me to jump in there and get into doing some of the sales too, visiting customers, and he wanted me to work in every facet of the company. I went from working in customer service to the handheld table to shipping, receptionist, packing, everything I did. So to learn how to make the honeycomb.
And how to run a company.
Yeah, well, that came much later, right?
And your dad was not a traditional executive owner. He was a immigrant, family-based, save all that you can, but take care of your employees kind of guy.
Correct.
And
Yes.
your team members, your employees still miss him.
Very much so. Yes, I just had a discussion with an employee about this. Yes.
The longevity of your employees, how long are they? What kind of anniversary chips do they get?
Our average employee's been there for 15 years. We did have basically during 2019, pre-COVID, we were gearing up and building capacity because we had, again, started having a big backlog then that was being forged by the 737 Air Max. And from there were just a lot of orders that we were just building the capacity. So we were hiring, but there were some outside people that we had come in that thought, hey, let's just hire a bunch of people and get them in here. It didn't go so well because they didn't have a good plan as far as the training goes. And we all of a sudden started getting a lot of scrap. John and I were not in the day-to-day of the operations. So when the 737 Air Max, if you guys know, it was halted and it was grounded because of the investigation that they were having. And with Boeing, everything came to halt, and right at the same time, COVID happened. And
air travel slowed down, so they didn't need, planes started to be put in the middle of the desert, so they didn't need to replace honeycomb as fast, and they weren't manufacturing planes as fast.
Correct.
So that hurts the top line, which hurts the bottom line.
Correct. So I came in and do you want to speak about like what happened?
Sure. Well, after you guys lost your dad to cancer, which was terrible, your mom was still there, but not involved in the business. And over time, less and less, and you take care of her now.
Right.
And the
She's
business
got advanced Alzheimer's.
And the business still takes care of your mom.
Yes.
Because that's the right thing to do. And that's the first and foremost for you guys. But was it easy getting along with your brother once your dad wasn't around?
No.
No. And there was the normal kind of sibling and family back and forth.
Correct.
Your
There's
brother,
two different ways of managing, of styles of managing.
and your dad, your brother kind of grew up as your dad's wingman in his style.
Right.
You learned every piece and had your style.
Correct.
And those two styles didn't necessarily match. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And rather than being yin and yang, sometimes it was oil and water. Is that also fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
So at some point, you guys argue enough to where you get some outside people that say, you know what, we can help grow the company. You be owners, we'll take corporate America stuff to the company. And you went through a few different kind of people that wanted to run the company or give advice. Was that good for the company or bad for the company?
Very bad. Very
How
bad.
so?
Well, it just, we had people there that didn't have our interests, didn't have the employees' interests. And again, I feel like I was naive about it. I believe these people. I felt like they had their intentions were good to help us. But again, in the long run, they were in there to want to come in as consultants and get it ready for, a sale. They saw how solid the numbers were. And from there, everyone had their own agenda.
Would it be fair to say they were paid extra based on performance markers they put in, but the performance markers weren't like yours? You have a performance marker that if there isn't a certain amount of cash aside, you get nervous.
Yeah.
You don't believe in debt per se.
Correct.
You believe in running the company within its means like Dad did. And they were, well, let's borrow money to grow. And that got you and your brother more and more nervous. And as cash on hand went down and they were saying they needed more debt to make it work, that was the canary in the mine shaft.
Yes.
At which point you guys said, whoa, time out.
Yes.
And then, and of course, it was the source of income for you and your brother, whether either of you or both of you were or weren't working in the business. Suddenly it was your cash flow to yourselves too.
Yes, very much so.
So what was it like having to dive in and learn how to be the head of the company after the mess that the consultants made?
Well, just going back a little bit, John, my brother, has a philosophy, or his managing style is just different. He's more hands off. He rather, again, he just wants to be more on the outer. He feels like he came to a point where he felt like he'd been there enough and did not want to be in the day-to-day of the operation. So that's where we kind of had a different, our agendas were different in that
And
sense.
it got frustrating enough at some point where you guys were considering the sale of the company for far less than what it was worth. Is that fair?
I would say that's fair, yes.
And what made you consider selling it, and what made you pull the plug on the sale?
When everything just came to a head back when we saw the cash go down, when it came to a point where we couldn't agree, and it got so bad that at that point I decided it's not worth it, because I was fighting a battle. I was fighting a battle that was just myself against a bunch of people that had this interest of taking apart the company and didn't want to see the owners there and have anything to do with the company. And so, and I had always been my father's daughter, that I had a passion for the company and I love the employees. They are family to me, and knowing, most of them have, again, that on average have been there for the 15 years. It meant a lot to me. I wanted to be still part of it. I even after Dad passed away, I was there day to day. And, I came in, it's been 25 years that I've worked there. So I had a good pulse. I didn't know how to actually be a CEO of a company at all, but I knew enough to who to rely on within the company. And that was a tremendous support and help for me. Also having outside advisors as well. When everything did come to a head, and John had finally realized, and myself, that hey, the company is going to go away very quickly if we don't do something about it. We came into agreement. We had the help of Joe, and tremendous help of Joe, and both of us worked at saving the company at that point, and deciding that I was going to be running the day-to-day because I wanted to. He is more of a managing partner, silent partner. Really doesn't have much anything to do today with it.
Occasionally on the phone, very occasionally flies in.
Now, yes, now. very little.
Still takes half the profit.
Half the profit, exactly. But at the moment, and it works out fine, because right now, like I said, you know, he knows, you know, the numbers are great, everything looks good, so there's nothing for him even to worry about. He knows it's solid, and if I do need him, I contact him. But for the most part, we during COVID, we did do the layout. We laid off the most,
Which was hard.
very hard. But it was also people that it was the newer. It was all the new people.
So you kept your historic, almost family members because they've been with your company so long. They
Correct.
like that
I
too.
made sure just to keep them, and I even kept them. I kept probably more than I should have during the COVID, but it worked out good that, you know, because we were one of the necessary companies that had to stay in business during COVID. So we continue to work, and it proved, you know, as far as keeping the people there, we did what we did a lot of pivoting, and you know, at the time, if we didn't have the orders or the business there, it was like we were doing 4-day work days, and
To get through.
yeah, just to get through. And by
But
the end of it, by the end of it, we made it through, and suddenly, and today I could say that we have an incredible backlog,
You guys are very financially healthy now.
and yes.
If we can just get materials.
Yes, because we're having a big issue with raw material, because there's that many approved sources by these original engine makers out there, like GE, Pratt Whitney, Rolls-Royce, that allow for approved, I guess, the
Material.
mills. Yeah, because we make the honeycomb with a very thin alloyed nickel that a lot of there's alloy companies out there, but they don't want to slit it that thin. And
So if I was to back up a little bit, company was very healthy. Dad ran a long time. Dad got sick. You guys ran. At some point, you lose dad. It's difficult between the two of you, but the company's still running. You guys get outside advisors who make a good deal of money, but the company doesn't do well with the way they'd like to run it. At some point, you and your brother get into an argument, and would it be fair to say there was well over $1.5 million in legal fees over that
Yeah.
argument between you, your brother, and the company's lawyers, et cetera. At some point, we get together when there's no hope, and you and your brother on day 2 mid-morning send a joint email to all the lawyers saying, stand down.
yes,
And the lawyers are concerned. One of the lawyers is very open to that. Other lawyers are very concerned because the gravy train's stopping. And it's nice when you guys are fighting. So you've been through a variety of advisors that were outside consultants that were expensive and hurt the company, lawyers that hurt. It was hard for you guys to say, who do we trust now? So you decided to trust each other. Is that a fair assumption, or am I wrong?
no, that's exactly right. It happened. So yes,
Yeah.
and John had been already talking, had been doing some business
With us.
with Joe, and at that point he had contacted me, because we're kind of like at the end there, like to me, I was done. We were at war at that point, and I felt like there was no turning back. I felt like, oh my gosh, I lost this brother because of all of this. And John said, just let's try one last resort. And that's when he had me contact Joe, and he flew in, and we spent 48 hours in a conference room.
That sounds like dental surgery.
And we just were able to listen to each other. And I think for the first time, I felt like he was listening to me. He understood, like, you know, I have that passion to be there. Let me do it. Because there was no reason for me to be at the time too, when all this took place. It got so bad that none of us could even step foot at the companies. And there was attorneys that said, you know, if you step near there, you're gonna, you know, basically they wanted to threaten to get me off of the board at the time, and it just got very ugly, and it was really sad to see it.
How do you end up developing trust in advisors again? Because you change accounting firms, you change your CFO, You change the alphas that are running the company. You keep the historic people that kind of run the whole thing. You've got different lawyers. How do you end up trusting those advisors again after all that turmoil?
Well, those advisors are no longer in our lives.
But you've got new ones now. How do you end up trusting them?
Well, yes and no. No, we've kept it steady. I would say you're like the advisor. I mean, we don't really, you just dial it back to things that you do know and you trust.
And your
And I
numbers are
don't feel like there's a need to have like, there's always there's definitely good advice out there to be had, but you also have to get to a point too where you have to trust the people also that your team. And I've got a group of long-term directors there at the company, and they really know,
very loyal people.
very loyal.
And it was hard on them when you and your brother were at odds, right?
Correct, yeah.
And
very much.
they're much happier that the family's getting along.
You go in the company and they know that they feel confident because I reassured them after these 3 years that I'm not going anywhere. The company's not going to be for sale. They know right now, like again, that I'm there for the long haul, and I'm there. I'm very hands on with the employees. I'm walking the floor every day, just as my father did, and it is all about family. It's all about now also as we are growing, building capacity responsibly now, with hiring, that we do it in a way that I love on these. I make sure everybody's loving on the new employees. That's been kind of our big thing to get our turnover down when it comes to newer employees, is making sure that they're really getting a lot of attention. I think what happened was we had a lot of employees. It was more the newer employees that were the ones that did not stick around. And we have a culture there. We have a lot of a culture of like, what is it then? Like a lot of different ethnic.
You're very diverse.
Very diverse. There's 20 different languages spoken there. But we do quarterly barbecues.
Your Christmas event is amazing.
And we do, yes. So they know, like I said, it's an open door for my office.
And when it's hot, you end up getting ice cream trucks, for God's sakes.
Yeah, yeah.
You do all sorts of stuff like that. In your Christmas event, they earn points and they end up walking away with iPads and bicycles and TVs and all sorts of things.
We did that though, like just the year that you were there. Now everybody wants their bonus. They want
their
cash.
bonus check.
They want cash instead. Yeah, we tried this thing called Honey Bucks because after the company, and basically they earn throughout the whole year Honey Bucks, and we do an auction and got things from big TVs, computers, all kinds of electronics, their wish list of things, and did an auction. And so obviously the more Honey Bucks you have and earned, you get to go for those big prizes. But
a lot of them got all sorts of things for their family. But
yeah,
in addition to that, if I was to get back to the advisors, because we're all advisors, you ended up changing out a few different things. You're much tighter on the numbers. What was it like to learn the numbers another way? Because you had to learn the numbers during a time where you brought the company out of hell, COVID hit and it destroyed. You had to manage to all the PPP loans and which employees you keep, which you don't, how you get through the bottom. Then you climb through the top, you keep your market share. What was it like having to learn all that?
as far as me just getting that, it was me getting like a lot of crash courses on our P&Ls and learning a lot about that, and knowing that, what, in the end, to me, it's about profit. So I have a certain number that I want. We found out also, like, our previous CFO had been not doing the standard accounting practice, the
Sure.
GAAP. So the way the numbers were, even in previous years, it always showed us doing like over 50%. Now they're more realistic, and we're in basically in our mid 30s. Try to go now to 40% gross margin.
So during the time that you had some outside advisors, that CFO was trained to report the books in a way that made the company look good, but it didn't have profitability because of above the line, below the line, and then tracking within each job set. Now the tracking by part, by customer is much tighter, and above the line, below the line is much more realistic. And you have economic indicators that are much quicker now to make a decision versus 6 months behind.
Yes, and on top of that, we had an ERP system that we did not utilize to the way it should have been. And we had accounting using the one system and basically double entry into the ERP system that we had at the time. And so when I came on board, it was my goal to make sure that we move everything into this ERP system. So we're capturing numbers correctly. We're capturing, you know, how we make these parts and what it takes to make the parts. And so we did an upgrade on the software there, and have been doing a lot of training as necessary. And right now, like I said, it's just growing the company responsibly at the moment, because we are in a growth spurt. We have a very big backlog that is more because our lead times of our raw material, but it's solid. And yeah, it's turned out great in that sense. And
Well,
employees are happy.
Ellen, Shelley, thank you. Lisa, we've reached our bewitching hour. I want to thank you very much for sharing so openly and honestly about your experience throughout. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I've answered the ones that people have been texting me. I've asked the questions too.
Oh, okay. I didn't know they were asking.
Naturally, it's a pleasure working with you, but thank you for willing to be vulnerable in front of all of us. Thanks for giving us all a peek into how an owner's mind works as you're taking over, running through hell, dealing with advisors, dealing with family, etc. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have a great morning. Shelley, thanks for helping set this up. Thank you very much to all the attendees that are out there and giving up your time this morning. If you have questions, by all means, reach out to the Institute. We're glad to answer them. And any advice to Shelley on program content, we're always into. That's how we got to this point too. So God bless you all. Have a great day. Shelley, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.